everybody. First, I wanted to say thank you so much for all your lovely messages, especially the ones in response to my newsletter. I love reading them and they always bring a big smile to my face. And I always want to reply to them individually. But, well, to be honest with you, I'm struggling at the moment to keep up. Anyway, I had this idea, which was that I thought maybe I could reply to some of the messages here in a video, and then it'll be sort of a fun way for us to keep in touch. So I'm going to go through as many as I can. I won't be able to do them all, but please know that even if I don't reply to you directly, I have read your message and I really appreciate it. Oh, I just realized I haven't even introduced myself for those who might not know me. So my name is Xin Yi, or HY Hanna. The HY are the initials of my first name, Xin Yi. And I write mysteries that appeal to readers who enjoy intriguing plots set in sort of vivid atmospheric locations, and often with a lot of quirky characters and cats with big personalities. I have a newsletter for my readers where you can keep up with my book news. So things like new releases, any promotions or special discounts, and also giveaways such as signed copies, which I only do exclusively in my newsletter for my subscribers. But there's also a second part of the newsletter, which is sort of the fun tidbits behind the scenes, where I share photos from my book research trips and just general sort of, the chaos of being an author. Before we start, here's Muesli. Come to say hello. Hi, Muesli. Last, I was talking about high tea, and I was sharing with you all the different things, the places I've been, some of the places, and I was asking if any of you've been to any high tea places. I've had lots of lovely emails from people. So I had a lovely message from Michael and his wife, who was telling me, his wife Daphne, and they were telling me about this amazing place they went to, which was in Bermuda, and they had high tea at the Princess Hotel. He said it was just incredible with tiny sandwiches and cakes and scones and pastry oddities. And there was no pressure to eat up and move out, as there are in some other places, he said. Of Jody, who sent me this lovely message, and she shared this beautiful picture of her and her husband. They're also having tea. And she was talking about them going out for their 31st wedding anniversary. Apologies if I've messed up your name, but Genevieve, I think, and Lily said, I really would like to know if you're going to write a new book in your English cottage garden mysteries. I really hope so. I mean, I don't know how other writers do it, but for me, it's like I hear voices in my head. And I know I shouldn't say that because that's probably going to get me in trouble. But it's not so much anyone talking to me, but it's almost like I hear conversations, a bit like eavesdropping. So I can hear the characters talking. And usually I see the scene playing out in my head like a movie. And so it's almost a bit like I feel like I'm a bit like an antenna. It's like I have to tune into the reception. The old-fashioned TVs when you used to get the snow, and we had those antennas, and and then you bang it every so often to like try and get it to receive the picture. So I feel a little bit like that sometimes, just like banging my head. Even though I really, really want to write the next book in a particular series, if I just can't get that frequency at the moment, I can't get reception for that, then nothing comes in. I don't hear anything, I don't see any pictures. But I keep tuning, I keep trying. So I am sort of constantly tuning the antenna. The problem with being an author is that sometimes, and I'm sure this is the same with any creative, is that sometimes you're tuning really, really hard for something and then you get something else. It's like you're trying to get one station, get this flickering picture from something else. So I suppose it's what they call the muse, maybe. But I can't promise anything. But if you're on my newsletter, you will be the first to know. Audrey had a really interesting, so she wrote me a really long message with about lots of things, and she was telling me all about her lovely husband, who sounds just like the most wonderful, hero in real life. And she says, unfortunately, due to health issues, I can't travel overseas from my home in Florida, but my hubby will be taking me to Niagara Falls in August, and we plan to have afternoon tea there. And will it be too late to send you pictures? So first of all, no, Audrey, please do send photos. There's no time limit on the photos. If you go to afternoon tea anywhere and there's something you want to share, please do send it. She also said that I'm a child of the 70s and my mother got me started reading Mills and Boon books. Here in the States, they're called Harlequin. She said, my favorite British romance writer is Betty Neels. And she used to order her new releases on Mills and Boon every month. They were expensive to me, but worth every penny. And you know what? I've got some Betty Neels books as well. So I went and specially hunted them down so you can see. So this is my favorite. I don't know if you can see, I hope it focuses. So it's called Roses for Christmas. And I found this, it's a secondhand book, and I found it in, I think, either a book fair or secondhand bookshop. And I just picked it up because I like the cover. It's like an very old fashioned cover. But it's the love. I mean, it's not, it's not a very exciting story, but it's the most lovely, cozy kind of story. And you know how I love atmospheric stories. So for me, that's always the biggest thing in the book is I love atmosphere. And for me, when I write as well, that's what I always try to put into my stories, vivid sense of being there. Like I want you as the reader to feel like you're there as well, because those were the books that were my favorite books that, Oh, Rita had a question for me. So in my last newsletter, I talked about the fact that, and I'm sure any author will recognize this, is that we often have to delete things, sadly. So Rita was asking me, she said, I've never been a writer other than projects for school and work, but deleting several pages of work seems so so defeating and frustrating. Can you ever save the work for use in another project? So I don't know. I suppose yes and no. I mean, I do save them. I don't just put them in the bin because, they are very precious. Like sometimes it takes you a whole day just to produce 200 words, especially if the reception's not coming. But sometimes we write entire chapters and then we send it to our beta readers. So in my case, different authors use beta readers differently. So I know some authors use them as more like proofreaders to find typos. But for me, I use beta readers at an earlier stage. So for me, they're more like the test reader. So when I finish writing the first draft of my stories, and that's like the raw thing that I've just put down on the page, I send them to a little team of beta readers I have who I trust their opinions, and they read the story. There might be inaccuracies, but the idea is not to not worry about that at the moment, because the more important thing is the story. So, whether the story hangs together, whether characters, are sympathetic, whether you believe what they do, whether it makes sense, that sort of thing. And for a mystery, of course, whether the clues add up and whether you guess the murderer too easily. They don't always say they don't like it, but they'll tell me what they thought. And then I listen to them and I think, oh my God, that wasn't what I intended them to think, So obviously I've written it wrong somehow. And so that's when I have to go back and delete things, or sometimes I do move them to other parts of the book if I can. What I do use, I use them for future books sometimes if it's a book in a series. So occasionally I've written scenes that afterwards I thought, actually that doesn't really work here. Or maybe it's just going on too long, because of the pace, it's quite important to keep the story moving. And so sometimes I feel like, oh, I've gone off on a tangent a bit, and actually this section is not really necessary. And so I'll pull it back out and I'll save it, but then I might use it sometimes in the next book. In my last newsletter, I was chatting about all the fiascos I've been having on the home front, with maintenance issues. Just it feels like everything just happens, one after the other. And I said it feels a bit like, all the different parts in the house and garden have made some sort of pact where they're all going to hold out for as long as possible and then all break down at the same time. And I had this sort of vision in my head of a whole group of them sort of limping along all these different house parts and garden structures, and then all approaching this wallet, which is just sort of backing away in terror. And that seemed to sort of resonate with a lot of you who've written to me about all the different issues you've been having. And for example, Marilyn in Minnesota said to me, a couple of years ago, the main water pipe from our street into the house broke, and we ended up with a 10-foot deep hole by about that wide and long in our driveway. And she said that it cost many thousands of US dollars. And she says, our wallet refuses to speak to us now. But yeah, so because we've had all these issues, we've had to call in tradespeople, or tradies, as they call them in Australia. Because you know how in Australia, they love to abbreviate things. So all words are sort of shortened and abbreviated. So for example, like the postman is called the postie, and your relatives are your rellies, and your car registration is your car rego. Which when we first moved to Australia, it took me a while to get used to all this, but I quite like all it now that I've got used to it, and I find myself using it a lot. But yes, so tradies here are a bit of a nightmare because it's really, really hard to find a reliable one. They sort of don't turn up when they say they will, and they tend to promise all sorts of things. And I thought it was a uniquely kind of Australian headache, but it seems to me from all your messages that it's the same all over the world. And I had Cheryl in Colorado who said it's the same over there. And Lauren, who said, I agree, finding good help in South Texas is even harder due to language barriers. I've got several other messages, but I won't go through them all now because it'll probably take a long time. So thank you again for all these lovely messages. And I hope you've enjoyed that. And I hope I'm not talking too fast because I have a tendency to talk very, very quickly, especially if I get excited. If you'd like to sign up to my newsletter, I'll put the description in the link below. I'll put the link in the description below. It's a great way to keep in touch, but you will also receive the selection of different stories that you can download for free. So, yes, it was lovely to chat to you, and I will see you in my next newsletter. Bye.